Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Dancing Heart podcast, the place that empowers and inspires you to live in alignment with your heart and joy. I'm your host, Torney Wiggum, here to bring you deep conversations with inspiring guests about purpose, empowerment, and living in alignment. Let's get dancing into this week's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Dancing Heart podcast. I am so excited for this episode because I'm bringing a guest that I had on the podcast before, Kaylee Wasilewski. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me again. I am so excited. I'm beyond excited. Thank you.
Thank you. From one mountain town in Norway to another one in the United States, you are coming in live from Montana, bringing in those beautiful mountain frequency codes on this episode today. So, Kaylee, you are an ascension guide, artist, and YouTuber, and you are such a bright, beautiful, light being. So before we're going to dive deeper into the ascension journey, my question is for you. What makes your heart dance today, Kaylee?
Oh, today it's the solar codes. The sunlight that's been coming through, the plasma energy from the sun has been so activating, and it's really been a beautiful doorway back into that crystalline heart light that I love to reside in. And it just really ignites that joy frequency within me. And it's just that little reminder of hey, it's all here, all the love, all the joy, all the light. So just really appreciating that. And I love too, being in a mountain town, we're a little bit higher, closer to the sun too, in elevation. So I just get a really good solar, radiant energy that comes through. And today it's full bore, which is perfect for this podcast too.
I love the frequency of the sun, and I know you've been on a journey with yourself, and also we've been on a journey together over the past month. And I had you on the show before, and you were talking more about that journey. So if anyone is interested to know more about your story and the transformational journey that you've been through, they can hop back on episode 20 and listen to the previous episode with Kaylee. And today we're going to take it a bit further because we're going to talk more about the ascension process and being a multidimensional soul. So, Kaylee, can you start with explaining what is an ascension?
Yeah, it's the expansion of consciousness that we're going through. So we're being activated from within, kind of like our souls are knocking internally on our doors and just being hey, are you ready to live more soulfully aligned? Are you ready to live more in the truth of who you are, which is directly connected to God, source, all there is, and unity consciousness that we are also expanding into, remembering that we're here creating this together, and we're here creating this moment by moment from within. And we're kind of putting the nightmare to rest. We're tucking all those distortions into bed and just being okay, we're going to tuck you into bed so we can actually go play. And there's nothing wrong with experiencing distortions or lower vibrational experiences. It's that they just are experiences. And many of us are coming back online to that memory of there's so much more going on. And it really is not only a self-development journey, but a self-love journey and a return home to that direct connection and that unity consciousness. So it feels like a dimensional shift in consciousness when you're going through it, because you're kind of going from a more dense reality where you're kind of stuck in stories and you feel as though, you're repeating the same things over and over again. And you're moving from that consciousness to freedom and to connection and to greater creativity. So to me, that's kind of what the ascension process is bringing our soul through our human body and activating every part of our lives with that living liquid light of love that we are.
Wow, that's a beautiful explanation. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Like, yeah, and we are living in a very interesting time right now where we have these timeline shifts going on. And I think there's a lot of people waking up and like having this question about like there needs to be more to this. And what do you think is the signs of like waking up to this higher consciousness, to being on this ascension journey?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for asking. A couple things. So oftentimes people's psychic abilities start to expand because we are being activated from within, and also by the earth herself being activated and the sun activating us. Like there's so much energy that is just like pulsing through our reality right now that is prompting us through this process. And it's interesting too, because a lot of religious texts talk about this time that we're going through. And it's just really interesting when you kind of like dive into more of like the mystical aspects of it. But oftentimes it is the expansion of your psychic abilities where you start to feel more, you start to become more sensitive, you start to notice things, energy, moods, and people, and you feel things in a way that perhaps you weren't aware of before. Maybe more synchronicities kind of come online. Maybe you start having more vivid dreams. So you can start to be activated in that way. And then also, like, reality just doesn't quite add up. Like, things don't make sense. You start to question things. Like, you'll have your own experiences, and somebody, or oftentimes it's like an authority that's telling you, oh, no, this is what's going on. And you're just kind of sitting there like, no, this doesn't add up. Like, you're saying this, but I'm experiencing something completely different. So it's this internal, introspective process that opens up as well. And there's so many other areas that this can extend into, especially with your experience of time as well, because we measure time, but as most of us know, we experience time differently depending on our emotional states, our level of consciousness and awareness during those times. And a minute can feel like a minute, or it can feel like, 15, 20 minutes. So you start having these experiences that don't quite fit with what we're kind of told reality is meant to function as or be experienced like. And it's really an interesting opening that starts to happen. I think a little bit of confusion comes in where it's just like things don't make sense. And that's when it can kind of like make you start questioning stuff. Or it can also just be a really exciting expansion where you just start moving in the flow of something that feels bigger than you. And it feels as though it's guiding you forward. And that's when you can also start questioning, like, well, what is this feeling pulling me forward magnetically? So there's so many different ways to experience this like opening of consciousness, but those are some themes that can kind of come in that people start feeling this like, whoa, what's kind of happening here?
Mm. Wow, yeah, totally. Thank you for taking us through this process on what you might experience when you start feeling this, I don't want to say symptoms, but kind of like this new emotion, like what is it? So how can you start to like don't put your mind too much into this process and trying to understand it? Do you have any tips on that?
Oftentimes, what can be helpful is just grounding into the present moment is like one of the first keys, right? It's like, okay, slow down so that you can actually feel yourself in the present moment, because oftentimes we mentally project into scenarios and situations that will further pull us out into imaginal realms that don't support us in being fully here, fully present to this process. Supporting the body is really important too. Just being present with your body, dropping in to feel somatically what's kind of occurring and what's going on. Supporting yourself nutritionally can be very beneficial as well, taking in the frequencies and the codes that you need to be functioning through your form to the most vibrant, like successful energy that you can embody for yourself. And yeah, slowing down. Breath work is super helpful. I personally have always been fond of essential oils, just that the smelling and the bringing in the senses to deepen, especially with the plants and the flowers, all those codes that can be held there for us. And being in the body for movement as well, which I know you love, the dancing, and dancing's a huge one for me too. Just remembering that like we are here, because when you anchor into the present moment, especially feeling your body kind of in gravity as well, helps you slow down so that you don't get caught up in the mental overload of kind of creating negative associations of the process for yourself, because we get scared, right? We kind of like, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? We can stress ourselves out so much with our thoughts alone that we cause ourselves more problems. So slowing that down and slowing down into the present moment with the breath and with tending to the body, the self-care, the self-love, so we can start to anchor into, okay, how do I integrate this? What's even going on? Is this something that I need to tend to maybe physically? Like maybe you need to drink more water. Maybe you need to take deeper breaths. Maybe you do just need to go and eat something. Or are you expanding into that consciousness and there's a different way to tend to that energy? So there's so many ways to look at that. And you need to be honest with yourself in the present moment with what you need. But slowing down is very much so important, because you need to be able to feel for yourself from within. And that's like really important, because we're so trained and conditioned to look outside of ourselves to tell us like what's wrong or what's happening. And the encouragement right now is to go within and feel for that, because you already have the answer within you. So if you slow down, you can really start to bring that information that's already coming to you closer so you can hear it, because your prayers you're asking has already been answered by source, God, source, all there is. Your higher self is already communicating with you. Your soul is like holding you in that. So if we slow down, we can start to derive the wisdom that's here for us from within. So you know exactly what pieces of the puzzle you need to bring in that are specific to you, because so many people have information for us, but until we know ourselves more deeply, we could be trying to apply somebody else's medicine when we already have the medicine within us, and we can be guided to that from within.
Yeah. Wow. That's it's great. Like go within. That's what you say. And I also know that you have this beautiful expression, what you always share with me, like you have to slow down to speed up. And that is probably part of the ascension process too. Like, and then you said you have all the answers within you. Mm-hmm. And to stop externalizing everything. Mm-hmm. And go within and trust that. And I think that is a hard part for a lot of people, to really trust the messages and these activations that you have within you, because we are so used to like to externalize these things, and you want to have some answers from outside of yourself. So how do you learn how to trust in your own abilities and in your soul, and like, hey, this is the piece I need for my soul puzzle, and it belongs to me?
Oh, I love that. It does because it belongs to you because it's your soul's light communicating with you. That was just really, I don't know, that felt like a little hug when you said that. So that's a really beautiful question because the trust piece is one of the greater things that humans are learning right now on this path of ascension is how do you learn how to trust that? And there's a couple different ways that you can approach that. And I would always say that it's just an experimentation. You're experimenting with this relationship that you have with yourself. So you need to softly open yourself up to that information and play and experiment and notice when fear comes in, deeply questioning that. There is an acronym, I think that's the word for it, but it's like false evidence appearing real when you say fear. So we're questioning that, we're looking at that, and we're saying, okay, is this fear that I need to handle right now in the present moment? Or is this something that I'm creating because I'm projecting from perhaps a program, a pattern, a thought, a belief that has been instilled within me? Because again, we've been so conditioned to give our power away. So when we notice fear come in around maybe some intuitive guidance that's coming forward, we question that and we say, okay, well, there's kind of ways to get around this too, but we're coming at it from like kind of like starting base, like level one. Question your fear when it comes up, when you're building that relationship with your soul self and when you're learning to trust yourself and your intuition a little bit more, because fear is always showing you an aspect of your consciousness that is out of alignment with love. And it's also where you might be believing in something that necessarily isn't true. So when we get into higher aspects of developing our consciousness and we're moving beyond fear, we experience reality a little bit differently. But when we're in those first earlier stages, kind of like massaging ourselves back into feeling safe with our own connection is a huge part of that process. So when you're looking at the fear, you want to consider, okay, is this something I need to address right now? Or is this something that I need to just mentally dissolve and like self-soothe through and come back into love and recognize that, okay, this isn't necessarily going to happen. And I'm going to come back in and trust this place within myself. And I'm going to come back into this feeling of love that's here, that's guiding me towards this thing. Maybe you're being prompted to do something, like take a class or maybe take an herbal supplement or something. And maybe you're a little nervous or afraid. So like questioning that, like, and being brave as well to experiment in that energy and say, okay, I'm going to actually go out of my way to learn more about this so I can soften my mental projection of fear. Or if it's like you're actually going to go do something that your intuition is guiding you to, that you're leaning into that trust, it's just being brave to put yourself in a new situation. But if it's like taking an herbal supplement, just learn more information and feel that in your body. And when we're learning to trust like those bigger decisions, another way that I really like to approach that is by clarifying your energy field. So when we shift our frequency, things dissolve in our field. So when you're coming at something and you're nervous and you're like, I don't know if I can trust that, you're already kind of in a space that is energetically not aligned with the highest frequency that you can experience, because you're already in anxiety, you're in a little bit of like nervousness and fear. It's a little bit more contracted and closed off rather than it being like open. And in that trusting energy, you know what it feels like in your body when you're not in trust versus when you're in trust, when you're in that openness, that expression of, okay, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to move towards this. Like, we know what that feels like in our bodies. And if you don't, I highly recommend just like playing with that a little bit and just sitting back and be like, oh, what does it feel like when I have noticed in the past that I'm nervous to move towards something versus when I've been, oh yeah, full send. I'm going here no matter what. Like, I'm moving forward. Like, we have those in our memory banks. We've all experienced moments like that. So that's a good way to kind of gauge in the present moment, like what's going on within you. And if it's a true, like, no, don't do this, or yes, move towards this, or if it's just a fear that's in front of it where you're not trusting the intuitive guidance. So when we do the inner work to clarify our energy and bring through more of our soul's light frequency, we just shift timelines. We shift and heighten our vibrational frequency. So things naturally, multidimensionally fall away. And when I say multidimensionally fall away, it's from this perspective of we have many layers in our energy field that are highly intelligent, that are processing information in a way that, like, as humans, like we're not always consciously aware of. I think some people do. No, this is true. Like, people do have the ability to start feeling their auric field and how their auric field is like processing information when it kind of comes in. But most of us are kind of in this place of like, I use my mind to process information. I use my body to process information because we're feeling things, we're thinking about things, and we're considering these energies and these frequencies and what they mean for us or what we want to do with them, how we want to use them. So when we heighten our frequency, we're kind of asking our higher self and our multidimensional aspects to filter out energy for us. It's just like, ooh, just shifting that timeline, because there's parts of you, different intelligences that you function through that are already processing that information, especially when you raise your frequency. So I hope I explained that well, because that's kind of like a feeling thing, like when you're experiencing it. And a simple way of describing that too is like when you do just all of a sudden shift your energy, and you choose to shift your energy, and you feel like, oh, what I was worried about before, not trusting the thing, doesn't even matter anymore. So you have multidimensionally processed something because you are walking in a new energy. You are emanating a new frequency. So you are moving and dancing to a new song. So there's a lot of different ways to approach that depending on what state of consciousness you're in. I highly recommend, clarifying your energy, because that's kind of like an easy way to bypass. So you don't have to, like, I call it flipping the pancake. I don't know why, but that's just like the phrase and the analogy that comes through is like where you're like cooking a pancake and you just keep flipping it and you just keep flipping it and you just keep flipping it. And it's already cooked, but you just keep flipping it and you're just trying to consider, you're like, I don't know, just in a loop, just cooking this pancake. And you're just eat the pancake.
Exactly. I love it.
When we shift our energy, we're eating the pancake. So that's probably the worst metaphor in the world, but that's what it comes to mind, because we can get stuck in our heads, like trying to figure out why we don't trust something. But when we shift our energy, we can open up to that trust. And it really is just a different way of approaching that. And it's not wrong to do either or. It just depends on where you're at. So.
Yeah. And you were talking a lot about frequency and shifting into like a higher frequency by connecting back to love and everything that's out of alignment of love, and being in your playfulness. And yeah, can we talk more about frequency? And if you look at things from the perspective of everything is just frequency, I think it's just a lot easier and it's more fun.
Absolutely. I love that you said that, because we really are able to have so much fun creating our lives. And when you do look at everything as it's just frequency, it's just energy, it gets so much easier. Everything's a little bit more clear. So when we're looking at energy and frequency, everything has information. Everything is emanating information. Even we are. I like to describe humans as more of like an orchestra, where you have all different instruments playing, and some instruments are in key and they're playing beautifully. And then some instruments might be a little out of tune, and we can just kind of like adjust those, because we're not just like flat frequency beings. We don't just have like one tone. We're giving off the symphony of music at all times. It's like our cells are singing, our heart is singing, all of our chakras are singing, and we give off this beautiful song that is our soul's tone. It is our unique frequency that we get to express as and live through. And everything has that. Humans have that, animals have that, trees, even this mic is giving off a frequency. So everything has information available for us to tap into. And when we're looking at creating our lives or looking at moving through this ascension process, yeah, it doesn't have to be so hard or challenging. It's just most of us have a belief, an out of tune instrument somewhere in our orchestra that's like, it needs to be hard. It needs to be hard. It's just this awful out of tune, like instrument that we can just, kind of be like, hey, you with the oboe, let's kind of get that into a better frequency, because we can choose to live most of our experience in a heightened vibration. We're just kind of cleaning up the distortions, kind of like what I was talking about earlier with we're putting the nightmare to rest. We're really considering these ways of expanding where in the past it's been, you need to work hard. You really need to kind of like pull your bootstraps up. And that energy functioned for a purpose in the past, but we have the opportunity to shift because we are opening back up to our creative power and remembering that we are creating our realities. And that's another part of the ascension process, is remembering that we are creative beings and we're creating this together. And when we look at those old beliefs and we look at those things that, kind of have lingered over time, we can look at them and consider them and say, do I want to carry this forward? Do I want to bring this energy with me? Do I want to bring this belief with me? Yes or no? And that's when we can dissolve that, because you're right. It is just an energy. It is just a frequency. It's just a part of our symphony that wants to be brought into a more harmonious song so that we can really fully express that soundtrack that we're here to bring to the earth plane, to bring to this experience and this existence. And it's just a matter of like bringing that into our awareness, especially if you know that you're not thriving in some area of your life. That's where you can look and be like, oh, where might I have a belief that this needs to be more challenging, or what am I attached to here? Because oftentimes we're afraid to shift into the love, light, and play frequency because of what we might lose. And I just encourage people to really look at those areas in their lives and consider, okay, well, yeah, sure, I might lose this, but what am I going to gain? What am I going to gain as I choose more of these frequencies that support me in thriving in every level of my life? And how that can support the people that I love, how that can support my family, my friends, my community, and just how I personally get to benefit from that as well.
I love that. And I love how you explained this as the symphony. Like, hey, if you don't like to play the piano, you can just go and play the guitar instead, if that is more kind of your jam, You don't have to sit with this piano that you don't know how to like really fine tune and find the perfect song for your soul. Like, go and get the guitar. So yeah, I love this. And you said your soul remembers who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you said like coming back to your soul's unique frequency. Like, why is it so hard to feel good and just being this energy of play?
Yeah. That's an interesting place to kind of like poke into, because I think a lot of it is just we have upper limits around how good we can let ourselves feel before the old beliefs need to kick in, or before our nervous system says, oh, this is too big, this is too much. Like, we need to make ourselves a little bit smaller so that we can stay in that comfort zone. And I think a lot of that does come from just personal experiences, possibly childhood trauma, just anything that has caused the energetics of the being to dim, to contract, to feel safe. So as soon as we contract to feel safe in our experience, it's kind of like we crystallize and create like a shell a little bit. So anytime we shine brighter than where that has contracted to be safe, it starts to crack that shell. And that's really uncomfortable because the shell is what we contracted into to feel safe, to feel like we can handle reality for whatever reason. And there's so many reasons why we do this as humans, to fit in, to feel safe. I think those are two basic ones that kind of come in. We're just trying to function with other humans. And especially being funneled in the earlier parts of our lives where we're not aware that we're creating our realities. So we're being programmed deeply to be in this contracted state because, again, once you start shining that joy, that frequency, it kind of cracks that or dissolves it completely. And depending on your belief systems, you will either let yourself shine and continue to bust through that contracted state, or you'll limit yourself again and you'll come back into like, oh, wait, no, I can only feel this good for so long because your nervous system is like, needs to be expanded. We need to come back into that safety in our body, which is a somatic process. And I feel like you've helped me do that a lot recently too in our coaching, where our body can get stuck in these loops, like remembering when it wasn't safe expressing a certain way. And we just kind of loop there a little bit. So remembering that it's safe to expand and self-soothe ourselves into those expanded states where it feels better to feel good than it does to not feel good. And then notice where that upper limit is for you. And why do humans do this? It's, I think, different reasons for everybody, but there's ways to heal that. There's ways to bust through that because we have such a large capacity to feel joy in heightened states of consciousness. But most humans don't know what that feels like. Most humans are functioning below neutrality energetically, and that's just baseline. So we need to raise our baseline, to a higher state of frequency on a daily basis. And we can do that by shifting our beliefs and shifting our focus and just choosing that energy that really lights us up from within, because you already have the map within you. Your soul knows how to feel good. Your soul is just naturally in that state. It's just our human energy, our human personalities that have been conditioned. And it's not a bad thing. It's just an experience. And our soul wanted to have that experience as well. Like, oh, what would it be like to be funneled into this path and then come out of that and learn through the adversity, learn through the challenges, and learn through the suffering. But I really do feel like we are moving beyond suffering for expansion into co-creation for expansion. And that's the opportunity that we have when we allow our soul's light to shine through, crack that shell, dissolve that shell so we can turn up the volume of our soul's creative energy living in and through this body in our realities. Because it's a different way of functioning. It's not so anchored in the personality and the mind. It's more the personality, the mind, the heart, and all of your other chakra centers and energy centers being clarified in your soul's light, where like any distortions, any patterns and habits that are blocking you from fully expressing in your pure creative flow have been released and reharmonized, brought back home into love, so that you can really freely create and experience life the way that you came here to as a soul.
Oh my God. I love the way you're just explaining this and like about this. Hey, what is your upper limit of how good are you allowing yourself to feel? Like everybody wants to feel good. Like everybody wants to be in their joy. Everybody wants to create the life that they came here to to create for themselves instead of like, hey, you are the co-creator, like you said. Like how much fun are you allowing yourself to have? We are moving into like a new timeline where we are here to like co-create from a place of joy, from a place of like love instead of suffering. So I think it's going to be like such a time to like witness people just starting to shine more from their soul frequencies and to tap more into the creative expression, because that is, like you said, what your soul wants to experience in this lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too, because like I definitely have more of an ascension like mind where like we're all here for this. We also have to honor the souls who are here for a little bit more of like the other stuff too. So just honoring all paths and all of those areas that may not be for those who feel called to this energy, where it's just like, oh yeah, I know I'm here for the joy. I know I'm here for this. I like to call it the heaven on earth foundation, where we are up leveling the frequency of how we interact with each other into that unity consciousness, that co-creative energy, that joy frequency. So we are literally experiencing heaven on earth. I know I'm here for this. I know you're here for this. And so many are here for that. But there's others who still have exciting unfoldings to experience in other energies. So that's the other part of the ascension process too, is like releasing judgment of where other people are at, so you can go where you know you are meant to go. And if you're here for the heaven on earth frequencies and the joy light frequencies, the crystal and heart light frequencies, all those beautiful energies, keep moving towards that. Because something that happens is that people, when they start opening up to this process, is they get so into their own spiritual path and they feel really good about that. But then they're like, oh, but my family member isn't doing this, but they're not moving in that direction like me. And we actually hold our expansion back because we're kind of looking to others to be like, well, they're not doing it yet, or like they're not waking up, or, we kind of like our focus gets deterred. And then you get caught up in judgment, and that's not the place that you want to be. You want to be moving in more of that flow and more of that love, and know and trust that when you shift into that frequency, other people have kind of like a pathway of light to follow, that you get to inspire people to their possible growth, but also detaching because they have their own soul's timing that's perfect for them. And knowing that the part that you get to play is by being a healthy cell in humanity, by being that joyful, soul-aligned energy in your life that gets to radiate outwards and uplift others vibrationally, but maybe not always in the ways that you expect. Because oftentimes we want to like tell everybody about all this stuff, like, oh, you can just quantum leap, you can just shift this energy. But if somebody's not ready, you're just gonna, it just doesn't vibe, and you can feel that. And then you get frustrated and you're literally decreasing your energy, like, kind of giving your energy away or draining yourself, because we're trying to like, take everybody with us. We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about taking others with us, because everybody gets there. Everybody does. It just might take a little bit longer because other souls are still working out different, I like saying distortions. You can also call it like karmic energy, where it's just these patterns that people are looping in for their growth, for their expansion, for the rock bottom moment that they need to have the contrast of light in their life. And again, I do believe that we can grow in the joy and just move towards the creation, but there are still people who are in those other vibrations of consciousness too. So just knowing that the more that you can detach and just move towards what you feel called to with that loving energy of acceptance. Acceptance doesn't necessarily mean that you're not setting up boundaries between yourself and these other things that might be in your field, whether it's people, patterns, habits, behaviors. Boundaries are great, but getting away from judgment of others is really important. Just like being like, I don't understand what they're doing over there, but there's a great book that just came out. I just started listening to it. It's the let them theory. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's just like basically the whole thing is just let them. Yeah, okay.
Is it Mel Robbins?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
I heard about it. And just let them.
Yeah.
And you can just be in your joy frequency. Yeah. And I know like you are a very joyful, high vibe frequency person like myself. And I know that it can be very triggering to other people. Like, why are you so happy all the time? Like, are you just like, this is just who you are? I'm like, yeah, it's possible. Like, of course, it's not all the time, but like most of the time I'm like, I choose to be happy. I choose to be in my joy. And I know that you are choosing that too, because everything comes down to it's a choice. Are you choosing joy, or what are you choosing today?
Yeah, it's so funny you bring this up because when you are a more heightened vibrational person, and we all are, like the soul is just limitless frequency and loving energy. It's just we have, as humans, we've taken on patterns that have like dampened that. So when people get stuck in their lives or they feel that way, because you're never actually stuck, like you say, it's just a choice. You get to choose. But a lot of people have, convinced themselves that they don't have a choice anymore. So just sending love to that energy. But when you are very high frequency, it's being so bright can actually like trigger others just casually. And being brave to still choose to be joyful is really important, because I know on my journey, that's been something I just recently have shifted in my identity, where I would stay small so other people would feel comfortable. But I wasn't being the fullest expression of who I love being, who I prefer to be, which is the more joyful frequencies. And that was something I shifted, and I'm practicing more now. So I catch myself if I start to dim, and I choose that joy. I choose that energy, and I choose to, kind of consider like, okay, what's going on here? So for example, let's say somebody's in your field and they're in a crabby energy, they're in maybe a negative space, and you're kind of in a really bright energy, and you can notice that they're being triggered by you. Now, in that noticing, you also have to notice yourself, because if you get triggered by them being triggered, you have something within you that needs to be reconciled, that you need to bring back home into love. Because as soon as you notice yourself being triggered in that's where there's some inner work to do. But if you can stay in that joyful state and just notice and witness somebody else being perhaps bothered by your brightness, or maybe they just don't get you, like, oh, why are you so happy kind of energy. Like, if you can just witness them in that, and again, we'll bring in the let them be in that energy. It's okay. There's room for all of us. And especially with people who are really bright and really joyful, like, we need that energy turned, like, turn it up and rip the knob off. Like that is the energy that needs to get fully bumped through the speakers, because it is so common that we as humans will dim ourselves to appease a larger collective energy or like thought process and thought patterns. And that energy no longer serves the collective. We need examples. We need living examples of what it means, what it feels like to be around people who are living in their soul light joy, so that we can be stimulated, so that we can be reactivated in that memory of who we are. And I feel like that's a huge like frequency activating energy, joy. Like as soon as you're around somebody that's joyful, you're going to notice, like, you're either going to want to go with them and be like, oh, all of a sudden you're just like more joyful because they are the higher resonating field of energy. So when people are in joy, they tend to be in a stronger frequency. So most of the time you'll kind of go up to meet them. However, we're trained as humans to lower our frequency, kind of like what I was saying, we're like frequency matching. But if we can stay in that stronger field of energy, we're allowing people to be lifted up vibrationally. And as soon as you come up against an energy that is a higher vibration than you either want to go with it or you're bothered by it. Again, that trigger piece of like, ooh, like what is it about this person who's just genuinely happy that's triggering me? It's probably because there's something in you that you have dimmed yourself, and it's shaking that. It's vibrationally waking that back up. But for some reason, you have adopted thoughts, beliefs, and patterns about yourself that say, I can't be that. I can't be my version of that frequency. And that's not true. That's never true. So we got to look at our patterns. We got to look at those triggers, and we got to like allow ourselves to be in that joy light, especially if, like you're saying, you are a more high vibrational being. Turn it up and rip the knob off, because that's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for. I love it. So when you were talking about the joy frequency, I know from one of your YouTube, you have a YouTube channel, you were placing one like picture with like different types of frequencies, and joy is not even on the top of that frequency scale. I don't know. Can you, like, what is the highest frequency that you can be in, like based on that scale? Do you remember?
I believe it was enlightenment, but I've also heard that authenticity is the highest frequency as well. But I would argue that authenticity and soul light is the highest frequency, as opposed to authenticity in emotional distortion. And I know I might get some flack for that, because like being authentic is always preferred. Like express your emotions, express who you are in the present moment. But I think oftentimes people dig their heels in when they are experiencing emotions, and they identify with the emotion and they say, this is who I am in this vibrational state. So you can be in a lower state of like anger, and that's authentic for you to express, but it's not the highest soul light authenticity. So that's a distinction I'm going to throw out there for people to consider, because that's something that I've been like kind of thinking about for a while, because I've had people around me who they're being authentic, but you can tell they're not in a high vibrational place. You can feel it. You can feel that there's like this tonality to it. So I think there's a difference between being authentic versus the soul light authenticity, being who you really are. Are you authentic to the version of yourself that you believe yourself to be, but you believe negative things about yourself? You believe that you can't live your soul's dream. You believe that maybe you believe you have a bad memory. Maybe you believe you just can't get anything done. Like, is that authenticity? Or is your, full alchemical activated soul light energy your most authentic, highest vibration? So I think there's room to kind of really consider what that means for each of us. And I encourage people to reflect on what it feels like to be in their fullest soul's light authenticity. Because even when you start to scratch at that, you will open up more and more and more and more of who you are from that place. And you will continue to raise your frequency, and your awareness of what's possible for you vibrationally from within by connecting in with that energy. And that scale that you're talking about, it's the vibrational scale, the emotional vibrational scale. Yeah, it's goes from neutrality is like
it just
the baseline. Yeah. And then you have like the lower emotions, not good or bad lower, but just lower vibrational of like grief, rage, anger, disappointment to neutrality. And then from neutrality is like the joy, the peace, the enlightenment, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, it was just nice. It just came to mind. I was like, yeah, this is, and I had to bring it on. So Kaylee, as we're talking about being like multidimensional and bringing your soul light frequency out to the world and being in your fullest expression, I know that your soul is here to bring, to help remember who you are as a soul, like as the ascension coach that you are. And you also are, you can do the light language that is part of your frequency and expression. So I'm just wondering if you would like to share a bit of that expression for the audience here today.
I would love to. So light language is the expression of the soul. So light language is also like associated with light codes. So it's like just the frequency that the soul understands and knows beyond the logical mind. So when we are expressing and tapping into our own light language, we can be tapping into our soul's like remembrance of other lives where we have spoken these other languages. And that's why it's something that when somebody speaks, the soul understands and the soul can feel that vibration, because it's more of like a vibrational translation of energy rather than it being how we're kind of talking now. But then I think, like, jokingly, if we were like Pleiadians and we were like, I'm going to speak some light language, I'd be like, I would like a cup of tea, like just speaking English light language, like. But it's this vibrational expression that we feel and we know in our hearts that we can translate what that feels like. And again, there's also different ways to communicate light language. Like you can paint light codes, which is something that I do. You can use your hands to communicate light language. And there's so many different ways that you can express that vibrational beautiful frequency for others to translate. So light language is many things, but obviously the language piece is the spoken word. And yes, I would love to translate. Do you have like an intention that you want to put out there, and then I can kind of embody that frequency and I'll share something?
Yeah, I was thinking about like bringing some joy frequency of more of like people can remember more of who they are and step more into their expression of their soul.
That's my favorite. Let me just kind of shift real quick and sit by the Sadaka. Shirika Surikian, like a shitikian, like a Shitukum, like a shitikin, like a Sitikudiam, Yatiki shitiki. Or that is Sasha Kalamo, like a Tikian, like a Tik would have won a guy should do. I like a shitikin, like a inna, shows the amra, down what a key is sitikam. There's this shitikupa, like a shitty and then to Sitia, boa. I see is your shumli is, so the shitty video, dear, like a shitty. Doa, shitty is so shitty, more like a tikia, should go leave or shitty libri house. Yan, yet the tikishin, yes, you tickety. And yes, yeah. So,
thank you, Kaylee. Like, thank you for expressing the light language. It's so high frequency. When you were expressing that now, I can really feel my heart is kind of like getting in, like I felt it just become like lighter and just wanted to like became activated and just joyful. So it's Yeah, you don't even like your soul understands something that is being activated within you. It's so beautiful. Thank you, Kaylee.
Yeah, no, it makes me so happy to share that. And it's quite natural, but even as I was doing that, I started to feel this really like this energy of just like really heightened frequency. And it was like, whoa, this is like kind of coming through. And I was like whacking my mic and stuff, and my hands started going. So it was like, okay, this is coming through right now. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. I just want to go out and dance right now and just move and just being that frequency. It's so nice. So, yeah, Kaylee, I know you have some incredible offers and you're helping people like with some pattern interruption, remembering who they are as a soul. Can you share with the audience where they can find you and connect with you?
Absolutely. My Instagram is a divine dream. My website is adivinedream.com. My YouTube is a divine dream. So, a divine dream across the board. And yeah, I love connecting with others who are on this soul activation path. So, yeah, reach out, find me.
Yeah, go watch your YouTube channel where you are sharing more of that frequency that we've been talking about today and the light language codes and more about the ascension journey. So, oh my God, thank you so much, Kaylee, for coming on the Dancing Heart podcast and like sharing some of your joy frequencies and with the audience. It's been so much fun to have you here again.
I know it really has. Thank you so much for this platform and thank you so much for just inviting me back on. I love sharing this frequency. So it really is a joy as well to get to communicate on here with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Kaylee for coming on the Dancing Heart podcast once again, sharing your beautiful frequencies and wisdom with the audience. And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. I would love to hear your insights and takeaways. Share it in your stories on Instagram and tag me with Torny Wiggum. I wish you a beautiful day and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Ciao.